Dragon.
Okay, at 6:33 with the recording going, I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. And I have no chairman's report, but I would open to any public input on items that are not on the agenda.
I have my hand up, Jeff. Do you see it?
I do. Sheila.
Sheila Hill, 2 Running Ridge Row. Thank you. Good evening. I wrote to you July 25th, asking that the correspondence relating to the dispatch move be placed on the website. Has that been done?
No, as to my knowledge, it has not been done. And Greg, you were in consultation with town council about that?
So town council says it's certainly optional from your perspective. It's not something that you've done in the past with other issues, but it's something that you can decide one way or the other.
Okay. That's an item that would need to be put on an agenda, Sheila. And we could put it on the agenda for next time. My own sense of it is, we'll talk about that next time. So I'll make sure that we put that onto the agenda so that people are duly noted that that's what we're going to be discussing.
Okay, I asked that my letter be posted. I don't see it as appearing on tonight's agenda anyway.
Your letter,
To you, to the board.
you asked for it to be posted on the web.
No, as part of the meeting record. I see you have a letter from Infinity. No,
Yeah, we don't
not quite enough.
generally post letters from residents in the correspondence section of this. So I would ask your forbearance that we go until the 16th, which is far in advance of the next public meeting. The content of your communication was about public dispatch, public safety dispatch, and that second public forum will occur shortly after Labor Day. We haven't set the date yet.
Mhm.
Okay.
But your decision to whether or not to post it will come before that.
No, we have to make that decision in public.
Yes, and that will come before the forum.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
Mhm, thanks.
thank you. Okay.
Jeff, question on that. Could you broaden that topic to communications in general, not just that specifically that come to the selectmen?
I don't want to discuss the agenda at this point. We'll have an opportunity to have input on the agenda. And one aspect of that will be posting communications from town residents on the website.
Fine.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, we can talk about what else we want to put into that between now and then. But I don't want to get into that tonight. Any other public comment? Okay, so let's move on to the first item on the agenda, which is a public tree hearing. And I need a motion to open the tree hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Ms. Jakes and seconded by Mr. Round. Roll call vote. Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
and Mr. White votes yes. Okay, so we have 7 trees that we've received information on for removal. And I'm going to read off the list of trees. There is and I'm going to read them as they're written in the hearing notice. Manchester Memorial School 30-inch oak, requested by Memorial School Project Manager. 5 Tux Point Road, 20-inch sugar maple. Jersey Lane, a 30-inch eastern white pine. And 1 Wilmington Avenue, 20-inch sugar maple. A 24-inch sugar maple in front of Sacred Heart Church. And 2 trees at Coach Field. Coach Field. 1 in the parking area and 1 along the street next to the parking area. Okay. Tom's here, the tree warden is here. Do any board members have any questions about these trees?
I do, if I may.
Go ahead,
Go
Becky.
I wanted to know if Tom looked at the Manchester Memorial School 30-inch oak.
Tom?
Certainly, yeah, I did. I looked at that on an appointment with the assistant project manager, I believe it was. But anyway, yeah, I did express my concern about that particular tree, that he would get a great deal of backlash about removing such a magnificent oak tree in such great health for the sake of placing a sign adjacent to it. I think what he told me was a concrete slab would be placed there. And excuse me, I went through a little procedure today, a medical procedure. I'm hoping you'll bear with me. I had a throat thing done. But anyway, yes, it does have a small basal injury in the root collar zone. There's a little bit of surface rot. I doubt that it penetrates too deeply into the core of the tree. The tree appears to be closing off, walling off that section well. If you look at the tree generally, you see it's extremely healthy, good color in its foliage, could stand a lot of a little corrective thinning and pruning. It also has a magnificent twin on the opposite side of the driveway, the same species, native red oak. And I think they make a beautiful matching pair myself. This is my opinion to you. I know my job is basically to evaluate the tree, but I would hate to see such a fine tree removed for the sake of a sign, where the sign can easily be adjusted a few feet there. We all know this is the Memorial School. We don't need to be made aware of that entrance there at that precise location. And I would strongly support keeping that tree.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom.
If I may, through the chair.
Could you hold, please, just for
Yes.
1 minute? I'd like to get the comments from the board first, and then I'm going to go to the public. Okay,
I'm part of the design team for the Manchester Memorial.
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. You didn't introduce yourself that way. Thank you.
So my name's Michelle Kaiserman, and I'm part of the design team. And we put together a presentation for the board as part of this 30-inch oak tree. And I was wondering if the board would allow us to present said presentation.
Yes, we will. This item is, this whole hearing is scheduled for 15 minutes. And that was a mistake on our part. In my review of the agenda, I didn't review the timings. And so this tree is an important aspect of it. I'd like you to hold off for just 1 minute, though. We have 6 other trees that have been brought up for this hearing. And I'd like to give our full attention to the tree at Memorial, but I'd also like to get 6 other trees taken care of. If there's any questions on the part of any board member on the Tux Point Road tree, the Jersey Lane tree, the Wilmington Ave tree, the Sacred Heart Church tree, and the 2 trees at Coach Fields Field. Would you please let us know whether you have any questions or concerns about those?
Yeah, Jeff, this is Eli. I have of all the other trees, for the most part, they seem fairly straightforward. They look like they're obviously in terrible shape. The one exception is the one in front of the Sacred Heart Church. It's not in the best of shape, but it doesn't look like it's necessarily in the worst of shape. And I'd like to hear a little bit more from any interested parties about that before we make a decision. That's the one that I would have serious second thoughts about removing right now. The rest I'm all fine with. And if Tom Henderson could speak a little bit more about the current state of that tree, I'd appreciate it, but I'm fine with all the other trees, and barring the Memorial School tree.
So Tom, would you like to elaborate on what you have to say about the Sacred Heart tree?
Yes, I admire your expertise. That's the exact tree that I had a few reservations about putting on, and I put on I would evaluate that tree as about 40, 60 as its health, 40% good health, 60% bad health. It's been in decline for several years now. I'm quite certain it has the normal verticillium wilt disease that we find in all these maple trees. It had a matching one taken down about 4 or 5 years ago that was on the other side of the walkway. The tree does conceivably have a little bit of life more left in it. I just thought, in my opinion, it looks so poorly and in such a prime location that it would be a good time. It's inevitable that that tree is going. It's subject to also the heavy salt wear use on that walkway constantly. And my thing is, if the church would let us put a matching pair of trees that we feel would be more suitable and more susceptible to the conditions we're encountering in trying to grow municipal trees, now is the time to move. Yes, the tree could continue to struggle on, but it looks so poorly, in just my opinion. And do we have anyone from the church or anything that would show up would be my concern. I was hoping somebody there would speak on behalf of the church if they wanted to keep it going. But I'm so glad you did notice that it's the second tree that I had a few concerns about. All the others, I'm sure, like you have said, are quite obvious to you. They're bad. Several of them I could have removed just as safety issues without any hearing. But this particular tree, yes, I agree with you. It does have a few more years, but as you can see, the leaves are tiny. It's about 50% dead. It doesn't have any major structural things here, but those will develop very rapidly, cavities. And I do believe it has a large included double top in it, which I'm sure there is some rot in it. And when it goes, it was going to start to go very quickly. But its life could be prolonged if that's what you choose to do.
Any other board comments on the trees that don't include the memorial tree and most specifically on the Sacred Heart tree?
Yeah, Jeff, I just have a question in general on the definition of a town tree. A couple of these trees, are they still in public property, or are they on private property, or what? Maybe Tom, you're more familiar. We discussed this, I don't know, about a year or so ago. I can't remember the exact specifications, but I thought it was like 6 feet or 7 feet.
I'd sort of defer that to one of the town officials. They established it and said I was just an advisor to the policy.
Okay, I'm not arguing the policy. I don't recall exactly what the policy is that we settled on. I think it was about
They can explain it
6
better.
feet.
No,
Okay.
it's actually 12 feet.
Is it 12 feet? I couldn't remember what the number was. Okay.
Any other comments or concerns on the Sacred Heart tree? Okay, I'm going to separate out Sacred Heart. I'm going to put together Jersey Lane, Wilmington, Tux Point Road, excuse me, and the 2 trees at Coach Field. Coach Field, and ask for a motion. No, we'll take that motion when we come out of hearing, I'm sorry. But we will bundle them when we come out of hearing. Any public input on those 6 trees? Everything except for the memorial tree.
This is Peter Manassian, 5 Woodhome Road. The white pine tree on Jersey Lane has a very healthy leafed out tree that's right next to it. And that in taking that, if that tree is voted to be taken out, I would ask that there be special care given to the tree that's right near it so that it will, in a sense, not be in any way harmed by the removal of the white pine.
Thank you, Peter. Any further public comments? Okay, so let's move on to the memorial tree. And you have a presentation that you want to make. Is it a slide presentation?
It is. If it's acceptable to share my screen, I'll bring it up. I'm unable to share my screen.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen.
All right. If everyone can see my screen. So this is the proposed site. This is the new school and the parking lot and the playground. The colored lines on here are the conservation restrictions on the site. And the black rectangle is the area where the tree is. We have gone in front of conservation already for this proposed tree removal and adding of the sign and have been approved by conservation. And so we are within their buffers and kind of jurisdictional areas. We're within the 100-foot inner riparian. We're within the 100-foot wetland buffer, and we're also within the floodplain area, but we're outside of the 50-foot no build. So the proposed site plan is that we're adding a sign and some underplantings. And I believe I heard that we're not adding a concrete slab. There's going to be footings for the sign, but it's not going to be a concrete slab. And so you can see the rectangle around the sign is just the limit of the planting area. And we're proposing soil erosion controls in terms of some silt socks around the proposed work. And what you can see here is that we are within the drip edge of the tree. And this is why we're in front of the board today, because if we went ahead with the work, it would damage the tree significantly within that root zone. And so I will turn it over to Dan, who's our landscape architect, who can talk a little bit more about the tree.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I hope you can all hear me all right. My name is Dan Soline. I am principal at Horiichi Soline Landscape Architects and have been the consulting landscape architect on the school project. Yeah, as you can see here, the tree is a 30-inch oak. It grows about 36 inches from the pavement edge. There is no curb between or along the edge of the pavement, so nothing to control the travel or prevent, discourage travel off the pavement. And as you might be able to see here, maybe perhaps we have a closer up photo later in the show, there are, wheel tracks, between the pavement and the tree, and indications on the surface of the tree that the tree has been, very likely struck, in the past. You can see there's a basal cavity, on the tree that's obvious there at the base. The consultant for the arborist consultant, Dan Meyer, on behalf of the WT Rich, the construction company, has described that as an existing cavity at the base extending into the tree 30% of its diameter, or to a depth of approximately 10 inches. So the canopy of the tree is 40 inches or 40 feet wide. As you can see, that canopy is imbalanced. About 30 feet of the growth, or the canopy of the tree, extends into the landward direction to the left in this photo, and about 10 feet extends towards the driveway. I believe this is an indication that the roots on the pavement side are not well developed, or not as well developed as they are on the landward side, because they're growing under an impermeable surface. So the tree is imbalanced, but otherwise, I mean, the canopy appears healthy, but the base of the tree obviously has been damaged by by traffic and other mechanical work in the area. What you can see in this picture is a tree in the distance, which is a similar oak. It was described as a twin. If it is, it's the dominant twin. This is a tree that has much better form, no signs of damage or poor health, and I believe is a tree that would benefit from the removal of the tree in question, because there would be less competition for light and water. Also, I would say that the public would enjoy the view of the better tree in the distance, if it was not.
Excuse me, just stop for 1 second.
Yes, sir.
You're starting to speculate about a lot of different things. If you can just stick to the health of the tree, that would be fine for us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Well, I think I've spoken to the health of the tree. So, Michelle, why don't you carry on with the presentation?
Thank you. So in these pictures, you can see this is the existing sign. So this would be pretty much the location of the proposed new sign. And in the here at the base, this is what Dan was talking about, where the roots have been run over, and the tree is starting to overtake the road. And in some of these previous photos, you can see in here the patching work. There was previous drainage work that was done in this area as part of the tennis courts and the rain garden project, where they did cut through a lot of these roots, and that coincides with the side of the tree that has the dead branches on it. So again, this is just a rendering of the sign that's being proposed in this area, and it's to match the existing high school sign. And the picture of the footings that would be under the ground, so it would be a total of 9.3 square feet of impervious area. And so when we permitted through, and then here's some, just again, competing canopy. When we permitted through conservation, so for the one tree that we're proposing or would like permission to cut down, we would like to add 2 new oak trees. And so these are like-kind oak trees. They would be set back a little bit further from the road, the existing driveway. So once these trees start to mature and to grow, they are not encountering the same problem that this oak tree is, where it's starting to overtake and go into the road and it's affecting its health. And we're also underplanting the proposed sign as well. And so the trees that we're proposing, these are not 1-inch little caliper trees. They're not Home Depot specials. So these are about 3 to 3.5-inch caliper type trees. So these are fairly sizable for new trees to be planted. And that is it.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the board?
Yeah. Michelle, in your presentation and prior in the materials that were given to us, it was posited that the sign itself, the installation of the sign will put the tree in jeopardy, just the installation of the sign. And originally, we thought it was going to be put on a slab. That was in our materials. Now it's not. It's going to be on posts. Can you go into more detail about why specifically the installation of the new memorial school sign is going to jeopardize the health of that tree?
So I'll ask Dan to answer that as our expert landscape architect.
Yeah, sure. Well, the installation of the footings requires, or the installation of the footings requires excavation, beyond the limits, of the footings. The footings would be excavated to frost level, which is about 4 feet, below grade. So there's a significant, area and depth of excavation that would be, required to provide the appropriate foundation for the sign. And that excavation would occur largely within the drip zone of the tree, and therefore disrupting the underlying, root system.
So is that because the sign is of such a nature that it requires, from a structural standpoint, those footings, are those the size of those footings being chosen as a design element as part of this project? In other words, would it be, from a structural standpoint, feasible to put the sign that you propose on smaller footings that would allow the tree to survive?
I can speak to that. Hi, I'm Dustin Lombardi. I'm the project architect on this. And so the original design did stem from matching the signage that is currently at the high school across the street in an attempt to create a campus feel to the neighborhood with the two schools. So we are matching the style of the piers on the two high school signs, one for the high school and one for the town facility behind the high school. So we're matching the style of those piers, which is kind of dictating the size of the masonry columns that we have to support this sign, and because of the soils that we have in this area is requiring the type of footing that we have. So we did look at alternative options that would have had a less impact, but then they wouldn't match the sign at the other buildings. It would probably match more in style with the stick framed sign that is there. But even with modern construction, even to do a sign that's similar to what's already there with a post, we would still probably need about an 18-inch sonotube footing that is going to go down below frost. So even minimizing that sign to something less dramatic would still require us to do some sort of excavation and digging in that area that maybe wouldn't damage the tree as bad, but would still cause damage to that roots. So we did look at other options, but the preferred option is to match the signs in similarity to what's happening across the street at the high school.
Dustin, could you tell me if there was any consideration in the design of moving the sign across the entrance road to the side where
across the entrance
road, much further away from that larger oak that's on the right?
Across the road, we have the problem of the other tree, but we also across the road fall into the no build zone of Concom. We're on the cusp right now of the no build zone, so we really can't cross the road and put it on the other location. But there is a larger, much healthier tree across the road that we feel we would infringe on even if we could build over there. We did look at moving it up the driveway further, but the expense of the sign to not put it on the street edge the purpose of it is when you're coming on the street, you see the sign. So if we moved it up the drive aisle 40 or 50 feet, then you don't really see it from the road. We didn't think that the expense of putting the sign there made sense because it's really a moniker for the building. We actually looked at even moving it to the other entrance, but it's one way. So we'd actually be putting an entry sign at an exit. And so then we thought that that was going to confuse people because they were going to see the entry sign there at a do not enter. And we were afraid that it was going to cause traffic problems if we had the main sign at that entrance. So we've been looking at this thing for almost a year as to where the location could be. And this original location was chosen because it was where the original sign was, and it matched the style of the high school tree, the signs across. But it's not really, we're not really planting it. We don't need to take the tree down to plant it where we do. Our thought is that when we do the work to install these footings, it's going to damage that root ball, and the tree might not die right away, but there's potential for us to cause more harm to that tree that's already being caused by the street on the other side. So we had approached this as, yes, we're removing a nice tree, but it's going to allow the other tree to grow better, and we're going to put back 2 trees of the same, if not better caliper of that tree eventually. And we are designing a 50-year school, which will hopefully be here for 80 years. So there is time to see those 2 new trees mature to be as nice, if not better than the tree that we're currently there replacing.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question about the entry road. Now, I assume along with the new school, they're going to redo the entry road as well. Is the footprint of the entry road going to be the same as it is right now? And it's pretty close to that tree.
It is going to be roughly the same size, but we are going to have to mill and repave that existing pavement that's there. So we are already going to be doing some digging and excavating on the root side that's underneath the road. So there, and you can see, as Michelle pointed out, they had already done some work there when that rain garden was put in. So those roots were already damaged once, and we will most likely scrape any of the roots that are on the top and damage them again when that asphalt gets put in.
Okay.
Becky,
current
Ann?
What's the current timeline for doing this work? According to your current schedule?
We would probably be cutting the tree down as soon as you tell us we can. So within the next couple of weeks, they're trying to start this week, work late August, but the tree would probably come down in the middle of August. We're moving into phase 3 of the construction, which is when this sign will be put in.
Jeff, if I may,
Go ahead, Becky.
was there any thought to moving and I'm not trying to presume that you guys haven't thought of many different options, but was it ever entertained to move the sign sort of closer to where the tennis courts are, in the middle of that field area? I know it would have to be elevated more. Was that ever entertained?
We did entertain that with Concom, but they did not want us to put anything in or near the rain garden that's there. It doesn't look like a rain garden, but that is designed to retain water in a heavy rainstorm.
Right.
And the drainage from that actually goes through to where you saw the pavement being cut up, which is why we're limited. We're sneaking the sign in the location of where the old sign is, because there's a drainage pipe to one side, there's the rain garden behind us, and then there is the tree, which we were trying to get it far enough over to attempt to save the tree if we could. But we can't get far enough over to get out of the tree canopy because the size tree, it's about a 30-foot radius around the center of that tree. So this is really in that corner. It's kind of the only location that works, with the exception of having to lose the tree. But yeah, we did go like that with them. They didn't want us to put it in the rain garden area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do have one more.
Becky,
Tom, I was just going to
I
ask.
have a comment to make. They keep referring back to the drip line of the tree. There are many things that are put in the drip line. I've seen sonotube drill holes drilled. Even moving away 6 feet away from the trunk of that tree. 10 feet would be ideal. It doesn't have to be out of the zone of the drip down to allow that tree to continue to thrive. I disagree totally with that it has to be outside the drip line. And with regard to that retention basin that's put there, that's all gone and just basically gone back to nature. It was never taken care of. It wasn't a feasible project when it was put in. It's never worked. It's just basically there's an underground flow of water that comes down off Spy Rock Hill, flows underneath all that land, and that tree has encountered all sorts of obstacles and overcome them. Just because it's unbalanced on one side, we have another beautiful oak growing at the exit corner of the property in the southeast corner or northeast corner of the property that's magnificent. And just to me, it's crazy to take down one of the nicest oak trees we have in town, one of the healthiest oak trees, with a little adjustment with this sign, 6, 5, 6, 10 feet, maybe use 4 small sonotubes. The damage to the roots on those trees that far away will be insignificant. And any arborist will tell you that.
Tom, can you tell me how old that you think that tree is, that the oak tree that we're talking about?
Yeah, I don't believe that tree was planted. I believe that tree may be a volunteer. That was a farm, the old Parsons farm. And I don't believe either of those 2 red oaks were planted. I think they're part of a group of them that were in the area on the other side of the road where the pumps are. I would say approximately, if I had to guess, at least 75 and maybe as much as 125. The other one is not on the other side of the roadway. It may be a little older, but I believe they're part of our old natural forested area that was in there. If you plant 4-inch oak trees, my experience in planting 4 oak trees, yes, they do look good, but 1- and 2-inch oak trees rapidly catch up and surpass the 4-inch oak trees in growth. So, and we intend to plant. The town intends to plant. I believe the Friends of the Trees has a plan to plant many trees along that strip and edge of the roadway going up there. But I just think you'd be making a terrible mistake to take that tree down, which has many, many years of life. And if done carefully and excavated carefully, using smaller 12-inch, 4 small 12-inch board drilled sonal tubes, rather than bringing big heavy equipment. Yeah, if you bring a big backhoe in there or something, naturally you're going to damage the tree. But that tree is never going to fall over. It's in a protective area. It's low and squat as compared to the one on the other side of the road, which is much taller. Those trees have adapted to the situation they're in. They both receive pretty much the same amount of light. The one there receives the morning southerly, southeasterly, easterly light, and the one on the other side receives more of the afternoon light. And that probably accounts for why it's a little taller and a little different shape. And just to characterize it as having a poor shape and this and that, every tree, once it gets out in the open, changes its shape a little in its growth pattern. And I just believe I have 3 children that graduated from that school, and all of those large oak trees have a sentimental value to me as a human being and what they provide the environment. And rarely do I get this emotional about a tree, but I think you would be making a very, very grave mistake not adjusting a sign for the sake of taking down a beautifully shaped, in my mind, oak tree. And beauty, as you all know, is in the mind of the beholder.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any other comments from the board? Any public comments or questions?
If I may, one of the comments was about moving the tree further, about like 10 feet away further. If I can share my screen again. this is the site plan that we submitted, and this is the location. You can see the location of the tree. If we shift it to the right slightly, it would be sitting on top of a drainage structure and a pipe. If we move it to the right of that line, we would be sitting on top of an electrical conduit. And then again, as Dustin previously mentioned, if once we start moving it further up the hill, then again, you just don't see the sign, and it kind of defeats the purpose of allowing people to understand where the school is and the driveway and the entrance is. And again, you know, and there is a inlet structure to this rain garden, so it is functioning. So there's a outlet structure to it for the water that goes there. It discharges towards another drainage structure, and so we were given direction from Conservation Commission, again, that we previously permitted through and have been approved, that we are not to do work within the rain garden area.
Okay,
Jeff, may I please?
yes, Becky, and then I want to ask again for public comment.
Michelle, are you able to straddle any of the conduits if you're not putting a slab and you're just doing footings?
It's no, so if we start doing that, it would damage the pipe, and then if there's to be any maintenance to it, it would disturb the sign in any future. So essentially you would have to dig out the sign to do any repair work if needed to the pipe. And each pipe has bedding that it's set in, so it's not just a pipe in the ground. There is a trench cut out for these. There's specific bedding material that goes into those. So straddling the sign over the drainage structure would disturb that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Michelle, could you take that down, please?
Okay.
Any public comment?
Peter Manassi and 5 Woodhome Road. So what we have here is a 30-inch oak tree that's perfectly healthy. And you've heard what Tom had to say. And and according to the new town tree policy, it's 2 feet away from being diameter-wise from being a heritage tree. So it's a significant tree.
Peter,
Secondly,
if in fact, Peter, it is a 30-inch tree.
I'm sorry, what was that?
If in fact it is a 30-inch tree, I don't want to get into
Okay,
a discussion about that, but the one across the way looks definitely like a 30-inch tree. This one does not.
okay. So since we don't have to worry about the Olympics here, things like form and style are not of consequence. We don't have to worry about whether it lines up with the sign up the street, and we don't have to worry about whether or not the form is a little bit, the shape isn't great. We're not rating the tree that way. We're rating the tree on the points that Tom made, and I think that's important. What I understand that the group, that the design build team, the architects have looked at other options, and maybe the creativity needs to be reevaluated. Why are we locked into the scale of the sign? Given the fact that the space there, the school is not hidden by groups of trees or whatever. The school its presence and its entrance and exit is very open. Most people in town know where it is. And so does the scale of the sign have to be the size that it is in order for it to simply communicate something that we already know, in a sense?
Okay, thank you, Peter. Any other public comments?
And I've got Jeff here. One last thing I'd like to point out.
Peter,
Yep.
hold on a second. I just asked for other public comments. Sandy Bodman Turner.
I'd just like to comment. I think the thing that has struck me listening to Dustin, Michelle, and Dan's comments is there was very little, this is a tree that's been here for 75 years. It's basically healthy. It didn't feel like there was an all-out effort to try and preserve the tree. And it just seems crazy to me to have something that's been there for 75 years or more be taken down because of placement issues with a sign. So, I'd like to suggest to the board that perhaps with folks who, with Tom more in the loop, maybe Friends of Trees in the loop, that there be another couple of weeks that the hearing be delayed so that there can be some attempt to try and figure out how to preserve the tree.
Okay. Zimmermeyer.
So echoing Sandy's concern and Tom's deep felt emotion about I haven't been in town for a long period of time, but yeah, Friends of Manchester Trees would certainly like to see that tree preserved. It's a long time, but I'm listening to your other arguments and understanding that there is difficulty there. So if there's any chance of working around it, that would be greatly appreciated.
Avi?
Hi, everybody. I'm Avi Urbis. I'm the director of operations and finance at the school district. And I just want to thank everybody for giving us a chance to talk about this tonight. Clearly we're here to serve the community. This is a community school and we want everyone to be happy with the outcome. And that includes taking really great care of everything along the way, including this tree. I can just tell you that we've had many, many conversations about this and the best way to proceed over the course of a year. I do feel like the group went through many different efforts about alternatives. And ultimately, we will work with whatever decision the board comes down with. And we completely respect the importance and sentiment of the tree. I just want to emphasize the fact that this was not a decision that came lightly or without a lot of iterations and different angles and different looks. And I think ultimately what came down to it was knowing that we had to work with the Conservation Commission. And on that note about the area not being maintained, we did just have an approval from Conservation Commission of that rain garden a couple of years back. So they did give that their stamp of approval for how that's functioning. But in terms of the alternatives, I think we were trying to make sure that we thought ahead and didn't do something that would just lead it to be damaged a couple of years down the road. And then once the project is done, you have a serious problem that's a lot harder to address. So I think we were just trying to be proactive. I know that it may feel callous. It really was not our intent. I think we're trying to think about what can we do. And by putting in 2 trees that we thought would be very substantial, hopefully signal our intent to have an outcome that leaves us with a 50-year school with a better solution down the road, hoping that we don't damage the tree in the process. We definitely looked at smaller signs. We would be fine with that if that's the direction we go. We just, at the end of the day, need some type of an alternative. And so I'm hoping that whatever comes out of this process, we have something that we can actually do, even if the tree stays there, so that, for example, people who maybe, I know in town, a lot of folks are familiar with the school, but we have all sorts of visitors and all sorts of people who come through. The sign provides some function. So if we're going to have one, we just want to make sure whatever we end up with can work, can be installed, doesn't fall down quickly. So it will need to be stabilized, and whatever is the best solution for the tree to make that feasible, we will absolutely work with. We've had a lot of minds trying to figure out what that is. And we thought that this was the best option we could come up with, not because we are trying to get rid of the tree, but we thought that this would be the best way to go. So If we can help further as you go through the next steps, please let us know what we can do. You'll find us very open to your feedback. I wish there were more ideas that we had already, but we're open to your comments.
Jeff, may I ask another question?
Go ahead, Eli.
When the district and the building project went before Concom to talk about impingement on the rain garden with respect to the sign, was Concom aware of the issues around the tree? Was the tree discussed at Concom? Or did they not see that because it was not within their purview?
So the tree is within their purview because, again, it's habitat and a resource within the inner riparian, which is 100 feet from the river, and within the wetland buffer. And so their direction has been, they wanted to make sure that the tree provides certain function in terms of shade provided, food source, because it is an oak tree, acorns, there is, squirrels live in there, birds use it. So they asked us to provide the 2 new trees so they're like kind, so it replaces that lost habitat. So we're providing the 2 new oak trees, and that would be the similar function to what the single oak tree provides. And then as the 2 new trees mature, it provides additional habitat and resource within their jurisdictional area.
I'll also just add to that. We actually went to Concom twice for this sign. The first time was under the assumption that we would be able to not affect the tree. But after design and all the other processes that we went through with trying to move the sign or minimize the sign, we determined that yes, we could put the sign where it was, but that long-term would probably damage the tree. So we thought it was appropriate to go back to Concom to make them aware that the tree would most likely receive damage from the sign. And that's why we wanted to propose removing it and putting new trees back rather than just moving forward with the sign and potentially damaging that tree 5, 6, 7 years from now. So we did actually go back there twice once we realized that we probably were going to cause damage to the tree.
I have another suggestion, if maybe this might satisfy everybody involved, if I may put that forth. Perhaps we could have DPW mark out where this drain is and mark out the conduit where this electrical line is, and look at it and see if we can possibly put these footings in and save the tree and have another site visit after that's done. The tree can come down anytime if the tree fails. There's going to be no significant in the next 10 years cost except cost of rise in material. It's the same amount of labor involved taking that tree down if it has to come down. To speculate that all these things are going to do damage to the tree, I've seen trees do amazing things, and especially a tree as healthy as this. And I appreciate very much the school, the director of the school is getting involved and saying he's willing to work to try and save the tree and have a comparable sign. It doesn't have to exactly match, but I think we can come to some sort of a reasonable compromise here and at least give another look at the site and see if we can come to that conclusion and try and save this magnificent tree, really.
Jeffrey, it's Peter Manassian. Could we take a look at that sign again that Michelle had put up so we can see the scale of that sign?
Yep, I can share my screen again. So this is the site plan. So looking down, and this is the existing sign that is there now, which is just wobbly posts. And then this is the rendering of what the sign would look like. And it's about 12 feet total from the outside post to the outside post, and it's about 4 feet high. And then again, looking down on it, this is what the footings are. The columns, they're about 2 feet by 2 feet.
How far beyond the columns does the footing extend?
The footings are roughly 4 by 4.
So a foot,
That's the
a
dash.
foot on each outside edge.
Yep. Yeah, the dash line that you see in there is the footing. And it's a 1 foot thick by 4 foot by 4 foot.
Okay.
Yeah, we feel like we might be able to get the sign in and not, and the tree could remain. The problem that we see is excavating for the footings could potentially kill a lot of its root ball. And that's basically why we're here, because we're afraid that putting the sign in is long-term going to kill this tree.
Jeff, may I?
Yes.
Looking at this from above, it looks as if the sign could actually be moved to the right further so that you're not
There's a
as,
drain line there and a electrical conduit
where is
to the
that?
right. I don't think you can see me pointing, or can you?
I can, yes.
Okay, so there's a drain line coming right here. And there's
Oh,
an
I see.
electrical conduit here, running right through here.
Okay. And the equipment used for digging the footings, is this an auger? What is it you use? And is there heavy equipment then that's then impacting the roots?
It would be heavy equipment that they would use. They would most likely use a backhoe. I mean, we can try to direct them to, hand dig it and do it to be less damaging. That will obviously increase the cost of the work that they have to do if they have to hand dig it, but that's an option that we can look at to try to minimize the amount of heavy equipment that is used.
Well, that's just it. I mean, you think about all the semis that have been rolling over the roots of those trees, all the weight, and yet they're still doing all right. And I just think to whatever we can do to minimize the damage to a spectacular tree, when trees are kind of having a bit of a rough go of it anyway. So why not pay a little bit more money to take care of what we have? Thank you.
Jeff, just one last comment from Peter Manassian. As a designer myself, this looks to be a case of form trumping over function. The scale of this piece with its brick sides and so forth could easily be scaled down. The footprint could easily be scaled down and still communicate what it has to communicate, and therefore be less of an impact on the tree. But this should not be a case where form it takes over function.
I have a question, if I may, for the, and that is for, again, Dustin, Michelle, Avi. Have you at any time consulted with the town tree warden, except for the one visit when he was presented with this tree will be cut down?
Yes, we met with him out on site. We looked over the tree with him before we went to Concom.
Is that once?
Me personally, yes, that's the one time that I met with him out on site. Yes.
I want to hold the conversation here because we are way over time in terms of this particular tree here. And get the sense of the board whether you feel that you have the information that you need to make a determination tonight about this tree. Not asking you how you're going to vote, but whether you have the information that you need to vote.
So from my perspective, I'm afraid I feel like I've gotten very little in the way of public feedback on this tree. Most of the people who've spoken here are board members or specifically members of Manchester Friends of the Trees. And I don't think we've had any of residents or family members, parents speak up, which I'm a little unhappy about. And that's one thing that makes me reluctant to make a decision right now. I personally could do with a little bit more feedback.
John? You have the information you need to make a determination tonight?
I'd like to hear, not quite, I'd like to hear a little bit more about Plan B. That is to say, Tom suggested that, hey, they don't call them mighty oaks for nothing. They have survived some challenges, and this tree certainly has. And you can probably move that tree around within the drip line, and the tree will, the odds are still pretty good. But have they got a Plan B, or is it just this particular sign and there isn't any scaled down one or slightly different one where maybe you're just going to put in dig an auger hole rather than a backhoe type of construction? Was there any thought given to another type of structure? Because if that's the case, that I think is,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't feel like you have the information?
No, I don't in terms of a Plan B.
Okay.
I'm
asking
don't
only
really-
whether you feel like you have the information that you need.
Right, and I don't really feel I do at this point.
Specifically, what do you need?
I also would like to know if there's another iteration that they can come up with in that, rather than not just cutting the tree down, but in that location, mitigating any damage to the tree.
Okay. And Ann?
Or not any damage, but damage.
There doesn't seem, I agree with Eli. It'd be nice to hear from other people in the public. And I'd also like to know whether it'd be possible to move the electrical line and the pipe rather than take down the tree.
Okay. So I'm going to make a suggestion that we continue this portion of the tree hearing until our next meeting. And giving the public that is not part of the Board of Selectmen or Manchester Friends of the Trees an opportunity to speak. Giving the schools and the architects an opportunity to come up with perhaps a different construction approach that would do less damage than a backhoe. And what the cost of that would be. And to postpone it so that there's an opportunity for Tom Henderson to meet with the designers to talk about options and alternatives before our next meeting. Our next meeting is the 16th. I understand that this is a 2-week delay in the construction of the sign, and that you guys have been doing an incredible job of keeping on time and in budget. But I would like to really recognize the gravity of the situation in terms of taking out a healthy, essentially healthy tree that can be, it could be saved. So can I get a motion from the board to continue the hearing on the memorial tree until August 16th?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I'm going to do a quick roll call on that and then go back to the other trees in the hearing. Eli,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar Turner votes yes. So I would like to come to a conclusion in 2 weeks as to whether or not the tree is removed. And I see both options on the table. The leanings of the board sound very much like they're leaning towards trying to retain this tree and as much as possible. So thank you for your time and thank you for the presentation. If you contact the Board of Selectmen's office, they can give you information about how to reach out to Tom Henderson, our tree warden. Okay, I'm going to move to the other aspects of the tree hearing and ask whether there's any other information that people need on those trees, or can we close the hearing and take a vote?
Jeff, on the one in front of this church, I actually would like to hear from the church what their position on that tree is. If nobody stood up for the church tonight, so unless we magically get that information in the next few minutes, I would suggest that we move that one into the next hearing as well.
All right, so make a motion, Eli, because we don't have anybody from the church here tonight.
All right, I'll make a motion that we continue the hearing for the 24-inch sugar maple in front of Sacred Heart Church, also to our August 16th meeting.
Second.
And a friendly amendment on that to invite commentary from Sacred Heart Church in the interim.
Yep.
Or at that hearing. Okay. I have a motion from Eli and a second from Ms. Jakes. Let's go to a roll call vote very quickly. Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Ms. Jakes.
Yes.
Mr. Round.
Yes.
Mr. Bowling.
Yes.
Mr. Bodnar Turner votes yes. Finally, we have 5 other trees that Tom has described as being between 60 and 80% dead. Those would be the trees on Jersey Lane, Tux Point Road, 2 at Coach Field, and 1 on Wilmington Ave. Okay, so we need to close the tree hearing before we can vote on those trees.
Motion to close the hearing
On just those.
on
Four
just
trees.
those four.
That's five,
Thank
actually,
you.
Becky. Becky,
Five.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Second.
Second from me, Mr. Bowling. Okay, roll call vote on closing the hearing. We'll start with Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. Okay, I will, I'd like to take one vote on this, rather than go through each tree and have to go through the whole process of doing individual votes.
Mhm.
Is there any objection to that on the board?
I'll make
Okay,
a motion.
I'm sorry,
You want a motion?
I want a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the removal of a 20-inch sugar maple at 5 Tux Point Road, the 30-inch eastern white pine on Jersey Lane, the 20-inch sugar maple on 1 Wilmington Avenue, the 8-inch Norway maple in the Coachfield parking area, the 30-inch sugar maple adjacent to Coachfield playing field next to the path, with the request that for the 30-inch eastern white pine on Jersey Lane, that particular care be made to not damage the adjacent trees.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. Okay. That closes the public tree hearing. We're way behind. And we have board and committee interviews. So we're going to start with the Council on Aging and
So
Jennifer.
Jennifer had to leave. She had a commitment that she had to go to. So she is available on the 16th, if we can reschedule that.
Okay. I don't see his name on my board, but is Christopher Wood Kelly? I've never heard of him referred that way. Is Woody here?
He is.
He is. He's at the
He is,
bottom of
now
the
I
list.
see him. Okay. Woody, would you please unmute yourself and tell the board why we should consider you for a return to the Community Preservation Committee? Mr. Kelly. Okay.
There he is.
Hello. Woody, I can't hear you. You're unmuted. Can you turn up the volume on your audio? Are you speaking? Okay. We have a technical difficulty here, which is I don't know whether anyone else can hear Woody. I can't.
So I'm wondering if it's possible for Woody to call in. There's a call-in number on the agenda as an alternative to using the computer.
Woody, could you do that? And we'll come back to you once you call in. Would you be willing to call in on your phone, please? While Woody's doing that, I'm gonna take up the next item because it's a fairly quick item.
Just for Woody's information, I'm sorry, in the chat, Tiffany posted the phone number to use.
Thank you, Greg. The next item on the agenda, before we go back to Woody, is the Downtown Improvement Committee reappointment of Carly Cook. And I think that the issue here is that we had misinformation that Carly was not wishing to be reappointed and have since been told that she does. So, Greg, is there anything else that we need to do aside from take a motion and vote on this?
No, that is what's before you.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion for the appointment of Carly Cook, the reappointment of Carly Cook to the Downtown Improvement.
Make a motion to appoint Carly Cook to the Downtown Improvement Project for a one-year term ending in June of 2022.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Fine. Let's do a roll call vote. Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Bogman Turner votes yes. Woody, you making any progress with the phone? Give me a thumbs up or not.
There's no additional dial-in numbers right now, so apparently not.
There's no open dial numbers?
There's no
There's
listing
no
of-
additional people dialed in yet, so I think the answer is no.
Okay. Does Woody need to sign off on his Zoom?
No, you can do both.
You can do both, yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to the consent agenda. We have the meeting minutes for the Board of Selectmen from July 22nd and a long document from the Historic New England Review, from Historic New England, reviewing preservation restrictions on land that's being transferred to Essex County Greenbelt. Any comments on the consent agenda?
Sorry, I'm realizing I'm not quite clear on something. Was so that item on the consent agenda, is that the Coolidge Point Road item?
Yes, 9 and 11 Coolidge Point Road.
Okay. So it's not precisely a review of conditions, it's the request.
It's a request for conservation restriction on the property itself.
Yeah.
Jeff, who reviews
What?
that on behalf of the town? Officially?
Greg?
Who reviews that on behalf of the town officially?
Greg?
If
Greg, yeah,
officially,
Greg, yeah,
so officially, you need to vote to accept it or not. So you have the
Right.
official duty of final yay or nay. And so we had town council take a very quick look at it. We didn't ask them to
Okay.
do a deep dive into it in terms of, what they're trying to preserve, but in terms of the form and template
Okay.
of it, it is pretty standard. And we also have some person from New England, Historic New England, Carissa Demore is on the line. So if you have other specific questions, she might be able to help.
no, I just, it's a very long document, and of course, it's in areas that we don't necessarily have expertise, so that's why I asked the
Right.
question. Okay, thank you.
If I may, I actually have a number of questions regarding this. And it might be, well, there's Woody. It might be Krista Demore that I need to ask these of.
And I'll just say hello, everyone. Carissa Demore, I'm here on behalf of Historic New England. Very happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, I kind of messed up your name, Carissa. Sorry.
No problem.
Jeff, if I may.
Go ahead, Becky.
Is this actually completely going to Essex County Greenbelt, or?
Oh, Becky, you're muted.
That sure doesn't help. Thank you. Is this going to specifically to Essex County Greenbelt? Are they definitely the grantor?
No. So Historic New England is selling the property. It's on
That's
the
what I
market
thought.
right now. There is an existing conservation restriction on the property that is held by Essex County Greenbelt and will continue after the sale. It remains in effect. And this will be a preservation restriction, so
Okay.
concerned with the historic values of the property.
Okay, my first, other than that, my first on page 6, 5.5, where it talks about the demolition. Why does it not include the demolition of the garage? Everywhere else in the document, the garage is included. But on 5.5, it does say that the garage may be removed at any time.
That's right. It is, in any of these types of restrictions, it is a balancing act between preserving historic fabric and allowing the property to be changed for future owners and have it continue to serve the needs and requirements of future owners. So recognizing that the garage is fairly standard modern construction and that likely future owners of a property of this scale will want some flexibility to expand that building and potentially add a second floor to it. We are allowing that existing garage to be removed. That was done in consultation with an architect and looking carefully at the frame of the building, recognizing that expanding it in its current construction would be a significant challenge. So the house itself will be. Sorry.
Go ahead. No,
the house will be preserved, and there's also a small shed that has some historic value to it next to the house. Those will both be preserved under these restrictions, but the garage can be removed.
There's nothing in that provision. If I could, I'm sorry, Becky, are you done?
No, well, that's with that one question, but go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, I want to stay for the moment on that particular provision. There's nothing in that provision that deals with an act of nature that would cause for the demolition of the house.
That's correct. There is another section of the document that deals with that type of substantial casualty.
Okay. Because I focused in on this because of the garage issue that Becky's talking about as well. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Becky.
Okay. On page 15, in section 14.2, what is non-exclusive jurisdiction?
Forgive me, I'm looking for the exact.
It's the fourth line of the first paragraph on 15.
That's correct. So in theory, if this document needed to be litigated in a court outside of Massachusetts for some reason, this would allow that to happen.
Oh, all right, okay. And then on page 27, it has the date under the second Commonwealth of Massachusetts with Ann Harrison. It's on this blank day of blank 2013. We might need to amend that.
Yes, and I apologize. The name of the chairman is also wrong in this. This was put together prior to your most recent election. So I have corrected the pages, and I'll make sure that 2013 is corrected as well, and that will be right when you actually sign them if you choose to approve the document.
Okay. There was one other thing, but I can't find it. So there we go. Well, thank you for answering my questions.
Do any other board members have questions? A motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Bowling, seconded by Ms. Jakes. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Ms. Jakes.
Yes.
Mr. Bowling.
Yes.
Mr. Round.
Yes.
Mr. Bob Turner votes yes. So with those changes, we'll be able to sign off on that document. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your help in clarifying those issues. Okay, Woody, you back?
I'm sorry for the technical difficulties.
You don't have to apologize. We're glad that you're here. My question to you was, would you please share with the board what your interest is after so many years of having participated in the CPC, of coming back onto that town board?
Oh, I have 19 years of experience working on CPA issues. 5 of them, it took this town 5 years to vote the CPA in. And I include those in the 19 years. And I think all of you know my time in the CPA, and I believe it's been a successful time. And we have an open seat, and Sue Thorne and I were co-chairs together, and we worked very well together. I'm now back in town, and I'd like to continue to add to what I can do to the town. It's as
To
simple
the
as
town,
that.
Woody, or for the town?
For the town.
Thank you. Okay, any questions from the board?
No
If I
ordinarily.
may.
Go ahead, Becky.
Woody, do you have any time constraints in terms of ability to give your time to the CPC?
No, I understand the time it takes, and it's fine.
And always, thank you very much for putting your hand up to volunteer. Really great. Thank you.
Any other board members have a question for Woody?
Nope. Woody's reputation precedes him. No questions needed from me.
Eli?
No, I was going to say essentially the same thing, so I'm all set.
Okay, Ann?
No questions.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to appoint Christopher Wood Kelly to the Community Preservation Committee.
Friendly amendment at large for 3-year term ending June of 2024.
You want a 3-year sentence, Woody?
Not a problem for me.
That's the opening.
Okay. The
So
amendment is accepted.
And so moved.
Moved and seconded, Mr. Round.
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Jakes,
Yes,
Mr. Boland,
thank you, Woody.
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Supervisor Turner votes yes. Welcome back, Woody.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. This was a short agenda. We still have correspondence. A letter from Xfinity regarding further changes, particularly to the services that they offer to Spanish-speaking folks. Town Administrator's report.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, quickly, I can run through these. Most of the information is really just FYI that I provided. Obviously, along with the rest of the country, we are anxiously watching what's happening with COVID, with this Delta variant. And so far, we're doing okay. We have had some small number of new cases in town. I think we had 3 new cases in the past week. So it does bear watching, and the Board of Health will be talking about the variant and whether or not we need to be thinking about additional actions or not at their meeting next week. So as I say, it bears watching, and we'll continue to try to stay on top of how things evolve here. I will say that vaccination rates in town continue, are quite good. We don't have 100%. It would be wonderful to get there, at least for those who are able to. So we just continue to encourage people to get the vaccinations they haven't already, and to consider whether or not they want to wear a mask when they are indoors in public settings. You have your workshop scheduled for next week from, 2 weeks from Saturday, this past Saturday. So August 14th, we are looking to hold your workshop, goal setting session, and need a decision whether or not you think that should be on Zoom or in person, given the rise and the concerns over with the Delta variant. It may be prudent to continue your Zoom sessions, as much as I would love to have us in person. So a decision on that this evening would be helpful, so we can get that finalized and start making plans. Jeff reported on the pump track and some subsequent discussions he has had with Parks and Rec, and we'll be putting that back on the agenda for the 16th, your next regular meeting. And on the good news side, we were able to go back out to bid for the Tux Point floats and the new gangway that's needed. and got a much better price, significantly lower than the first time around, by allowing a much longer time frame for that project to be constructed. So we do have a competitive bid, and that's within our budget, original budget, and we'll be getting paperwork and final approval to you soon. And that project will start at the end of this boating season and be ready for next boating season. So I'm pleased that that has progressed. The new walkway is nearly complete with the temporary restrooms located on that stretch behind next to the sewer plant, as people can make their way from the town hall parking lot over to Beach Street. And we hope to finalize any remaining concerns that property owners may have during this week, so we can get that fully functional just as soon as possible. There were some concerns about the large event at a private home. It was scaled back this past weekend, and to such extent where that it fell below the various permitting thresholds. But it was a reminder both to property owners and to staff to make sure we are on top of special events that may be occurring on private property. As long as they fit within certain parameters, it's okay. But if it crosses over into selling tickets and selling alcohol, et cetera, then it goes into a different category and requires additional permitting and may not be allowed at all, depending on the scope and size of the project, of the event. So we'll continue to work with the different departments and communicate the needs to the public so that they understand where those thresholds lie. And then finally, we did receive a response from the Attorney General's office concerning an open meeting law complaint. It involved the ZBA and the Conservation Commission. So what happened? There are two things that the Attorney General pointed out for us to make sure we are vigilant about. One is when scheduling meetings, so board members can go back and forth with emails on scheduling concerns. In this particular case, one of the ZBA members also opined a bit about his feelings about a project, in addition to confirming whether or not he could make a particular site visit. And so the Attorney General flagged that as not being consistent with the letter of the law. And we will be making those emails that were exchanged public so that people can see exactly what transpired. And I think people will be pretty comfortable that it was a pretty honest mistake. The other issue that the Attorney General raised, there are a couple, maybe 3 sets of minutes that did not include in the AG's eyes sufficient detail about the discussion that took place. So again, we'll be revising those minutes and adding that additional detail as corrective action per the AG's letter. So a good reminder to all of us that we need to make sure we are always mindful of the details of the open meeting law and that we make sure that we're in full compliance. So with that, Jeff, I can turn it back to you.
Okay, so we do need to make a decision about meeting in person or on Zoom for the board workshop on Saturday, August 14th. I don't want to get into a big discussion about that. If people have concerns one way or the other, I'd like you to voice them now, and let's come up with an agreement that that's which way we're going to be doing that meeting.
I think we could do that one in person. Personally, we have generally in the past, but I'm neutral. I'll do whatever the rest of the board wants to do.
Same.
Yeah, and I'm okay either way. I'm okay in person.
If I may,
Go ahead. Yeah.
my concern is just my concern is, I'm perfectly willing to do whatever I need to do to be there in person. But if COVID comes up as more of a concern and we change our mind, it's going to be inconvenient for me. As most of you know, I will be probably on Mount Desert Island somewhere. It's 5-hour drive. I can pull in I may be able to make it without driving, but my only concern is if we say it's going to be in person and I make all of the arrangements to be there in person, and then at the last minute we say, oh, COVID is coming up faster than we thought, so let's not do that, then I will probably have inconvenienced a number of my friends.
When I made my statement about being neutral on this topic, I had made the assumption in that statement that all of the board members were all actually originally planning on being in town on that weekend. So if we're going to have to significantly inconvenience a board member, I wouldn't be asking for board members to do that.
I agree. I'm happy to Zoom.
John?
I'm okay Zooming if that's the case. And that is an inconvenience. 5 hours down, 5 hours back. That's a big deal.
It's also amazingly inconvenient to rent a car on Mount Desert.
Yeah, no, that's not reasonable.
Okay, so it seems like the consensus is to do it as a Zoom meeting. I would also support that, given that we're trying to contain the boards from holding in-person meetings until the hybrid setup is in place. And Greg told me today that that's still scheduled for later this month, towards the end of the month. So that meeting will be a Zoom meeting. In terms
Thank you
of,
very much.
okay, you're welcome, man. In terms of a couple of the other items, you all received an email from me that I had asked Max Warnick to hold off on doing any site construction or materials acquisition until the 16th. I should have said until after the 16th. And I'll clarify that to him in another email. I was not trying to go against the vote of the board, but the concerns that were raised by the Park and Rec Committee and Cheryl Marshall were such that I felt like the board needed to hear those concerns and then make a decision about whether there would be a vote for reconsideration. So it was basically putting Max on pause for 2 weeks, and I will inform him of what those concerns are so he can be prepared to answer to them, or answer them from his point of view on August 16th. And in terms of COVID, I've been approached by some members of the board, as well as we've all received emails from a few people, at least in town, about considering restaurant reopening and other actions. I had said that I wanted to defer to the recommendations of the Board of Health, but we have a problem, which is that the Board of Health is not meeting until August 12th. And our agenda needs to be published before they meet. So I'm going to recommend that we have a COVID update with, I don't know how specific it'll be, but a COVID update put on the agenda for the 16th. If it's broad enough, we can address concerns about what comes out of the Board of Health, and perhaps also address concerns about dining issues and parking issues. Okay?
Jeff,
So-
may I?
Yep.
I just want to know if for that, we could also have current guidelines from the state regarding outdoor dining and alcohol.
Yep. We'll definitely research that so that we know what they are. Okay. Those are other matters that were not reasonably anticipated by the chair when the agenda was published. I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn, unless there's any other business that the board is concerned about. A
Do we have
motion to
executive?
adjourn to executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for union negotiations.
So moved.
Second.
And moved by Ms. Jakes, seconded by Mr. Round. Roll call vote. Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Bob Turner votes yes. So we are now going into executive session. So I need to stop the recording, correct?
Yep.